Alrighty, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you all for attending Aparo's Nonprofit Bites and Insights. If you are in the Charlotte area, Sarah and I were just talking about the rain. Hopefully you guys are staying dry. It's supposed to clear up this weekend, so fingers crossed. So let's get started. Aparo's Nonprofit Bites and Insights. These are our webinar series that are designed exclusively for nonprofit professionals like yourselves. We feature speakers and experts from all different industries to come share their knowledge and insights with you, all free of charge. So today we are going to dive deep into website user experience for nonprofits. So we're going to talk about how to optimize your website user experience so that you're effectively connecting with your target audience. And our speaker, Sarah DePasquale. She's going to dive deep into the strategies and techniques to help make sure that your website is resonating with your key audience. But before I officially turn it over to her, a few housekeeping details. All of our webinars are being recorded, and there are two places now where you can access them. So you can access them on our website, or you can subscribe to our YouTube channel now. We have a new YouTube channel. All of our webinars from the past and moving forward will be on that YouTube channel. So highly recommend that you subscribe to that. All of you attending today will receive a follow-up email from me. That will include the link to the recording as well as the slide decks and other resources we might talk about today. Q&A and chat box are available for you to use to ask questions and make comments. Please feel free to use that at any time throughout the presentation. We will be monitoring both. And then finally, if you like to use closed captioning, that is available as well. So for those of you who are new to Aparo and what we do, really quickly, we are a nonprofit ourselves. We are based in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we work with nonprofits to help them with any of their technology needs and challenges. The way that we do that is we connect nonprofits with skilled volunteers and corporations in the community. And together as a team, we help support that nonprofit so that they can do more in the communities and populations that they serve. Our services are broken into three categories. We have advice, education, and solutions. All new nonprofits will go through our advice. This is what we call our tech therapy service. So you'll meet one-on-one with a tech therapist. You're going to talk about your technology need and challenges, and they're going to make sure that they connect you to the right service. So just some ideas, if you're looking for a one-on-one coach, if you're looking for resources or solutions, if you're looking for a vendor, we can help connect you with those. We also offer customized team trainings. And we also have our community impact projects. So these projects are longer term projects where we help you find a tailored solution to your need. So for example, if you're looking for a CRM or a donor management system, that would fall under this service. These are the different ways to connect with us. So if or when you decide you'd like to access our services, the best way is to go to our website and submit a request. You can also subscribe to our email list to stay up to date on our events and programming. We have some exciting webinars coming up in the next few months. Subscribing to our email list will get you the best way to stay updated on that. You'll also get my contact information, especially when I send that follow-up email. Feel free to respond to me if you'd like to connect with me, and I can help connect you to the right place. And then finally, if you like what we do, please consider writing a Google review. I do want to take a moment to highlight a new Aparo service. I think it's very relevant to this topic. So our new service is our website user experience evaluation. And I'm actually going to dive deeper into this at the end of the presentation. I want you to understand what user experience evaluation might include. Sarah's going to talk all through that. So I think it makes sense if we talk about that at the end of the presentation, but just wanted to highlight that. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and go ahead and turn it over to Sarah.
Great. Thanks so much, Yanting. Let me get my slides set up. Okay. and get into presenter mode. I'm having, okay, now I can see it. Thanks for holding on there with getting set up. But hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's call, and thank you so much for Yenting and Aparo for having me. I'm really looking forward to getting into our topic of user experience today and talking about how we can understand your website's visitors and their goals in order to improve your digital products, including your website. So we'll start today's session by talking about your website audiences, how to learn more about them and their goals, and then we'll review how you can make your website better by focusing on certain improvement areas. And in all of the sections that we look at today, there will be some takeaway actions for you, and these are going to be organized by a foundational level of items and then more advanced items. And like Yenting said, these will be related to that UX evaluation piece that she talked about too. So just before we get into the details, I'll do a quick introduction. My name is Sarah DePasquale. I'm currently a user experience manager at ICF Next. ICF Next is a global marketing agency, and I often work with clients in the federal space. But before joining ICF Next, I worked at a few different nonprofits, including at Goodwill Industries International for 5 years. And at Goodwill, I managed the intranet, and that's where I really got interested in user experience. I have my master's in human-computer interaction from the University of Maryland, College Park, and I am certified in user experience from the Nielsen Norman Group, which is a leading industry firm in user research. So I'm really passionate about user experience and really user research and how this all works in the social sector and public spaces. So I'm really excited to be talking about this topic with all of you. So we asked you a few registration questions when you signed up to attend the webinar. And the first one was, does your organization follow user experience practices on your website or other digital products? Interestingly, or not interestingly, but most folks were unsure, and that is totally okay because we're going to be talking about these items today. So we'll be talking about a few different user experience practices about how you might improve your website. But we'll start with some definitions just to kind of ground us. So we have a definition for user experience today, which is really what encompasses all aspects of the end users or the person using your website experiences with your organization, with the services or programs, and ultimately your products. Then I also included here a definition for human-centered design. And I really want to focus in on that last part of the definition. So creating products and services that resonate with real people and are made according to your audience needs. And I want to underline that, audience needs. So hopefully that will drive a lot of your decisions related to your services, including your website. And I know as nonprofit organizations, this is really rooted in all of the work that you're doing. So I'm sure this is resonating with you. So when we're looking at human-centered design, we want to talk about how to understand your audience. And this includes identifying the groups of people and individuals who use your website and services. And when I say identifying, I really mean defining who they are. So who are they? How do they feel? What do they do? Which all leads to us understanding what their goals are. And that ultimately understanding what their goals are and what they want to accomplish is really going to help drive those improvements to the website. So we did ask a bit about this in the registration as well. So most folks agreed or even strongly agreed that their organization knows who their website visitors are. Interestingly, there were about 14 folks who were either didn't agree or disagreed. So maybe they were just a little bit less sure about this, but it's nice. We're gonna have a mix of folks who are most confident, they have a sense of who their primary audience might be, and folks who might want a few tips from today's call. We also then asked about, do you agree or disagree that my organization knows what your website visitors want to accomplish? We had even more folks saying that they agree with this question and about the same who are maybe a little bit unsure, but we're going to talk about that today. So why is it important to understand your audience and their goals? So when I'm saying audience, I'm going to use audience throughout the presentation, but this could also be referred to as your website visitors or their users. And the most important thing to understand is who they are and what they want. So this process for beginning to understand your audience is maybe different from market research or other focus groups you might have done. We often call this user research. And while I recognize there may be many different things that are driving the direction of your products, or maybe the content that you're writing, there's different stakeholders, there's fundings, but hopefully audience and what they want and need is a large part of that too. So who is your audience? We all have primary, secondary, and tertiary audiences. From the nonprofit perspective, I imagine these might be clients, donors, volunteers, or maybe this is another group entirely. Maybe these are board members. Maybe this is general community outreach to get folks more informed about what you're doing. But whoever it is, it's important to have a visual in mind of who those people are. So I'd actually like you all to participate in just a little exercise now where you would imagine who your audience is based on some of these characteristics that I've listed on the slide. So grab your piece of paper, grab your pen, and whether you already know who your audience is, maybe you can just dig a little bit deeper as you imagine them. So take a minute to what's their name, what's their experience using your website? Do they often visit it? Are they a first-time visitor? Why are they visiting it? Are they looking for specific information on a program? Are they trying to download some documents or maybe fill out a form? So take about a minute just to sketch it out on a piece of paper to answer some of these questions about who your audience might be. And as you're doing that, we'll really want to end up thinking about this person and this particular audience kind of throughout the presentation, kind of going back to them, because again, that's really going to be the motivating factor for a lot of the improvements that you might make on your website. We got just about 10 seconds left, but if you need more time or want more time, feel free to let me know in the chat. Okay, so we'll take that audience, you'll keep them top of mind. And we'll go on to our first poll question to understand what do you want your website visitors to accomplish when they're visiting your site. So this is just a short answer, and it can be brief. I want them to find information. I want them to complete a form. I want them to sign up for a service.
I can see there's 11, 12.
Okay.
We'll give it a few more seconds.
Great.
Are you able to see the details?
I cannot.
Okay, so I'll just highlight there. We have about 16 people answer.
Okay.
So I'm
Thank
just
you.
going to read a couple of them. So better understand and find information they need, as well as learning about my organization, be able to easily sign up to volunteer, to understand who we are and our work in the community, to make an appointment.
Okay.
To learn about our company, to either volunteer, work, or donate.
Great. Okay. Thank you. So it sounds like some of the items there did align with some of the ones I've got populated here. So learning about a program, signing up, completing a form, which might be signing up to volunteer. I'm not sure if I heard the donation piece, but That might be one as well. So certainly identifying who your audience is and defining who they are is important. But that's only part of the puzzle, right? We also want to know what are they doing and what do they want to accomplish. So it sounds like folks have kind of a sense of that, which is great. And understanding your audience's goal is really going to help them drive the improvements you make to your website. So on the next slide here, we have our first set of recommended actions. So how might you define your audience and their goals? Or if you already kind of know this, maybe how might you further understand them? And as I said earlier, these are all going to be organized by kind of a foundational first step for some basics, and then a more advanced step that we'll talk about. So in terms of a first step, definitely recommend meeting with your key stakeholders. So starting with uncovering the assumptions and making sure that there's alignment between organizational leadership, your website manager or managers, content managers, and writers, to make sure that you're all aligned on who your audience is and what exactly it is that they're doing. And this photo here is from Mural. Feel free to let me know in the chat if you have used Mural before, but essentially it is an online whiteboard. And they have a number of templates that you can use to facilitate a conversation with your peers or others. And this particular template is an empathy map. So it's organized into 4 different quadrants, maybe a little bit similar to the exercise we did earlier, where you can write out what your primary audience is feeling, what they're thinking, and what they're doing. Because ultimately, we want to be on the same page with our team members, right, about what an audience's motivation or ultimate goal might be. Because if we're not on the same page about that, we might not be on the same page about what the priority improvements to our website would be. And I mentioned Mural. This template, as well as some of the other resources I'm going to mention throughout the presentation, will be available to you when we send the slides out. So in addition to having that conversation, there's an opportunity to review your analytics. So reviewing your analytics might be a first step before doing any further user research. And you likely already have this information either from your website or maybe even from your email campaigns if you want to start there. So you can understand, analytics can help us understand in a straightforward manner what website visitors are doing on the site. And Google offers a guide, a how-to guide for nonprofits on using analytics. Folks on the call might already be familiar with it. This is a screenshot on the slide from that guide. So it can really tell you kind of what's the popular pages, where website visitors clicking, where might they be coming from. The only caveat I would say is that analytics cannot tell you why a visitor is behaving in a certain way. Really, only the deeper research can do that. We can't make a lot of assumptions based on just the analytic numbers alone. Which brings us to what additional user research might look like. So we've got the box with the blue background that lets you know we're on maybe a more advanced step. So this could look like conducting formative research in the form of in-depth interviews or contextual inquiry. So interviews, you might be familiar with that from your own experiences, but it is when you're talking to your primary audience to understand what type of information that they want, what they look for, and how they find information now. Really trying to understand the concept of how they go online and find information beyond using your website so that you might tailor your experiences to what they need. It can also let you know whether or not you are meeting their needs currently based on what they tell you. And then a contextual inquiry is another interesting user research method. This actually involves observing someone using your website or services in their own settings to see what they do and what that experience is like. And then in terms of a next step for analytics, you'd want to define your key performance indicators or your KPIs to then be able to track and benchmark any improvements you have along the way. So one example might be if you happen to have high exit rates on an informational page. And high exit rates are when someone spends just a little bit of time on a page and then they exit very fast. Well, why might the user be exiting quickly? Is it that they're getting the information that they need and so they're leaving? Or is it they aren't finding immediately what they're looking for and so they're leaving? Or does there happen to be maybe an external link on that page that's taking people away from your website? Understanding that, making changes, and then tracking the improvements along over maybe a 3-month period, a quarter-month period can really help improve your overall sense of what's going on your site according to the analytics. So going back to some registration questions, this was when we asked our website visitors can find what they need on our website. We had most folks agreeing, some folks were not sure. We also asked do folks agree whether or not that their website is user-friendly? Kind of interestingly, this is actually the one that folks disagreed with the most compared with any of the other registration questions, which is okay. And we'll be covering some of those improvement opportunities based on different sections of the website today, for your website, excuse me, today. But before we get into those, I am interested in understanding kind of where you want to focus on your website. What are you thinking already is the most important sections to improve? So we'll have another poll question for you. Okay. So we've got, is there an area on your website that you want to improve? Yes or no? And then what is the most important section? We've got 3 suggested options there, but definitely if your priority area doesn't fall in there, please feel free to put your other in the chat.
Yeah, sorry about the number 3, just pick choice 1, it doesn't matter.
Yes, pick choice 1. We'll see if we get 50-50 responses on that one.
Got some answers coming in, so we'll give it a few more seconds.
Great. Definitely don't be shy if there's something that's not on here and you want to put it in the chat. Go for it. Content. Okay, awesome. Thank you, Suzanne.
I'm going to end the poll and go ahead and share those results.
Okay. So folks are confident in the area you want to improve. I think that's great. Have a goal in mind. And then we've got a lot for menu. That can definitely be a big area. And we are going to talk about how information is organized. And then some for mobile and some for other. I'm seeing the chat. Doesn't have knowledge. Everything need. Okay, I'm seeing 2 for. We need lots of updates. So hopefully the improvement areas we look at today is going to help really give you a overall picture of what some tips and tricks you might take away to improve the site. So that's great. Thank you for participating. So these are the areas I was referring to. We're going to be talking about organization, layout, content, accessibility, and mobile. So content is definitely in there. I know that was called out. Organization and layout kind of looks at the whole big picture of the site. And then I know folks talked about mobile as well. So starting with organization, is your website organized in a way that your audience can find important information that they need? And we'll look at 3 areas related to this. So we've got homepage, the categories, and then a consistent navigation. So this one is a little bit of a gimme, I will say, because most modern websites, they do offer this at this point, that you can get to the homepage, back to the homepage from anywhere you are on the site. So either usually it's through the logo, or in this case, this particular example also has a home link in their menu. That's not necessary. The logo is fine. But you always want to make sure that no matter where an audience member or a website visitor is on your site, they can get back home. If they ever get confused or lost, that is a great way for them to find what they're looking for and get reoriented. The next one here is the information categories. And when we say the information categories, it is categories that are meaningful to your audience. So this example here is using, I'm making an assumption, they're using these label distinctions for each of their audience. So perhaps they have the get help label for those that they assume are going to use their services. And then they have the get involved, which might be for volunteers. Maybe it's also for donors. So maybe these are, we're guessing a little bit, right? We're making an assumption, but they seem to be saying these are our 2 audiences. This is how we split them up, and this is how we're organizing the information for them. And then consistency, is the navigation consistent across the website? So what that might mean is, does the menu appear on all of the pages? And also, is it the same menu on all of the pages? Sometimes we can click into a menu and the top level changes and it's something different on the side, which can sometimes be a confusing experience. But in this example here, when we click on become a member, the visitor is taken to a new page and they're taken a page without any navigation. This can be pretty confusing for folks, especially if they want to return back to the main website or just get back to the page that they were on before. It can be an confusing experience with that navigation is not consistently showing up on all aspects of the site. So when we think about how we would improve the organization, as I said earlier, this really is focused on understanding your audience and their goals, because that's really going to drive a lot of the actions to improve. So the foundational piece would be starting with auditing the steps it takes to maybe complete one of the goals that you want your audience to accomplish. And then we have some advanced user research methods, but we'll start here. So imagine that the top goal or top task that you want on your website is to have volunteers sign up. How many steps does it take that audience member to complete that? And now we're less concerned these days with the number of clicks than we used to be, but each step really should be straightforward. So this is an example from the New Jersey voluntary organization Active in Disaster. I actually worked with them when I was in AmeriCorps Vista. Their links are very clear, right? It's clear enough. I know this is where I have to click to get to the volunteer form, but once I get to the sign up page, and let me use the laser pointer here. Once I'm here, there's a lot of text that I have to read or scan through or scroll past just to get down to the form where I'm supposed to sign up. That might seem like a small thing, but it might also be an unnecessary burden to some of your audience members, or maybe someone who is easily distracted if we want to talk about accessibility. So we really want to think about to understand the steps it might take for someone to complete your goals on your website. That said, this is really about having a baseline for yourself and for your team of what's going on, but this cannot be the only thing that might inform your fixes. If we wanted to fix this path or this journey to fill out a volunteer form, we would really want to talk to the audience about that. We would really want to get a sense of, is this actually burdensome to them, or what would they prioritize improving? So now I'm going to get into just a little bit more advanced user research methods. And the first is a card sort. So a card sort is a research method for getting feedback on your website menu labels or the categories and the information that's organized underneath it. So you can see here, I annotated the slide. It says categories for those top menu labels. And then the sub menu labels, those are cards. So the card sort would be to understand, do these labels match with your primary audience's expectations of what they would call information and how they would organize it? And while I'm referring to this as a menu, really overall, and folks might know this is your information architecture on your site. How is the information organized? Now with a card sort, it can be done with physical paper. So those cards, you could print them out or write them out on index cards, and then you could have categories, just have them on a table, see how people manually organize them. You can also use an online tool. This particular screenshot is from Optimal Workshop. This is a tool that I've used before, and it allows you to virtually put cards in front of someone and see how they would organize them. And this can let you know, do we need to change a label? Do we need to change the location of where something is organized? Now, once you've done a card sort, a next step might be a tree test. And this is a method where once you've confirmed your menu labels, or maybe you even changed them, you then want to see what your audience actually does when they try to find the information. So on the screen here, I have an example of what you might ask the audience to do. So it's the task here. Imagine you want to make a matching gift through your job. Okay, do we expect them to go to the Donate Now button? Or do we expect them to go to Support Our Girls and then go down to Workplace Giving? A tree test would let us know, what are they clicking on first? Do they backtrack? Do they eventually find where we want them to go? Which I think would be Workplace Giving in this case. And that can, again, just confirm where we've organized things in our information architecture, in our menu, is that meeting our primary audience's expectations? And the tree test is really best conducted online. Again, you could use Optimal Workshop for that, and I'll share that link in the resources. I know these photos are maybe a little bit grainy. I apologize for that, but the top one shows an example of what a task might actually look like for a visitor. So they would pick from these menu choices that we've made up. And then the bottom is an image of what the results look like. So you can see it looks like a tree a little bit. You can see the green path is where most of the participants seem to go, where they went to look for the answer. But then there's a few other gray branches in there, right? Where maybe they were looking for it in another place. So what does that tell us about the organization of the site? So that was organization, and now we're going to look at layout. So is the content presented in a consistent and predictable way? So are the essential functions easy to find? Again, these are essential functions for your audience, right? So this is from the Young Nonprofit Professional Network. This is a board I actually used to be a part of. And you can see that they've got a Become a Member button. And that's because I happen to know they are trying to grow their membership. So it was important for them that that's a goal that they wanted for their audience to click on, and they know from their audience they're trying to become members. But we also can sometimes see this as a donate button, but that wasn't necessarily the right goal for this site. And if we stay on the YNPNDC example, this is a screenshot from their website. This is an image that says join our team. However, the image is not clickable, so they can't click it. It's not a link that goes anywhere, which can be misleading. This can especially be misleading if you are on a mobile site where there's no hover, there's nothing that indicates you could click on it or not. You're just tapping with your fingers, right? So what are some of the actions? Well, one would be to become familiar with the best practices for having clickable user interface, UI here. And then a more advanced step might be to actually conduct some usability testing. So do all of the visual elements aid the user? And when I say visual elements, I do mean the images. I might mean, how does the text look? Is the text underlined? Is it blue? Kind of best rule of thumb, blue text should be a link. If it's not a link, we should not have text in blue. But we really want all of the visuals to add clarity, convey hierarchy, or aid in task completion. Now, the example here is from a CDC website, so this is not a nonprofit. But when you look at it, what do you imagine is clickable on this page? If you imagine that these kind of images right here are clickable, they're actually not clickable, which can be confusing because they look very similar to the images right on top here, right? So that's why it's really important that if something is clickable in one place, and it looks the same as another, they should all be consistent and given the same treatment visually. Likewise, I also have a note here about images shouldn't be too flat. And what I mean by that is they should really stand out on the page so that they indicate to whoever's on the website that, hey, this is actionable. This kind of longer image here in the middle is clickable. It does go to another page, but it's really too flat. It doesn't really stand out, especially because it takes the whole width of the page. It's not clear it's an actionable item. And this is just a bonus. It's time to rethink the carousel. I know folks use it. It's definitely still popular on websites, but for many reasons, a lot of website visitors only see it and click on the very first image or that first slide in the carousel, even though a carousel often takes up a lot of room on a website. And there's actually a really great website you could go to called shouldiuseacarousel.com that kind of walks you through maybe why it's no longer kind of the best layout we should be using on our websites. So a more advanced step here is usability testing. So I've included an annotated image of usability testing from the Nielsen Norman Group. Again, that's a user research firm. However, user research can be conducted remotely by a user researcher. So a user researcher would review your website with an actual user, another website visitor, so that they could observe them completing certain activities, understand where they're getting stuck, and then help you prioritize the improvements you could make by understanding, the 5 out of 10 people kept getting stuck when they were completing the form. This is the part of it that they're getting stuck on. So that's really the benefit of doing some usability testing, because it lets you get that feedback directly from your audiences. And now we've got content. I know this was one that folks were interested in. So starting with the goals of the site, are the goals obvious to the audience? Again, this one's a bit of a gimme. We don't want to hide who your organization is or what they do, right? So having the goals or your mission statement right on the homepage, clear, not hidden at the bottom, is a best practice. This is an example of the mission statement for Seek that's listed very clearly on the homepage, not too long, next to an image, a great practice for all nonprofit websites. And the next is having clear labels. So we talked about labels a little bit earlier in organization, but we really want to make sure that they align with your audience. That is key. So I included 2 examples here. And the first example on top is from the Humane Society. So as a member of the general public, and again, I know maybe I'm not the main user, but we're going to say I'm general public coming to this site. I'm not quite sure what the difference is between our fights and our impact. I could pause. I could guess maybe our fights is their key issues, their advocacy issues, and maybe our fights are the actions that they've actually taken. But I don't really want to think on a website. I don't think you all want to think on a website. I don't think your audience wants to think on a website. And there's actually a really great book about usability by Steve Kerr that's called Don't Make Me Think. It's a really quick and easy read. There's a lot of pictures in it. But then we've got the image underneath it where it says who we are and what we do. Although those aren't necessarily unique, we've maybe seen those on other websites, they are a little bit more clearer. I think I have a little bit of a better sense of what I'm going to find when I click there. And then plain language. So is the tone and jargon appropriate for the audience? And again, your audience is key. So Mary's Center here, they clearly offer or are involved in a lot of services, but do the labels resonate with the people who use those services? Does the audience themselves see themselves as a participant? Do they understand what they will find under medical as compared with behavioral health? These terms are not inherently jargon, but do they meet user needs? Does it meet the audience understanding of plain language? So what are some actions we might want to consider? To start, we want to look at maybe the readability of your website's content, and then a more advanced step might be an actual plain language review. So in terms of readability, there certainly are automated tools that you might want to consider. The example I'm using here is the Hemingway app. It's an automated tool where you can copy and paste content to improve the overall readability. So it'll look at passive language, it'll give you a sense of what your grade level is for the content. So this might be something that you want to consider. Maybe if you have a particularly dense page of text, you want a quick sense of, hey, is this on the right path, or do we need to make adjustments? Or if you happen to, maybe you have a weekly blog, maybe you have some upcoming content that you want to run through this, this might be good for that type of work. And then in terms of plain language, automated tools are great for catching things like sentence structure, passive voice, as I said, but they can't tell you how to write for your audience. And writing for your audience is something that you can do when you know your audience well. And the Nielsen Norman Group says, avoid writing for everyone, because when you write for everyone, you are writing for no one. So you also want to use terms that your audience is familiar with, so words that they are likely to use, because by understanding who your audience is and what they do, that can better inform your content labels and the overall content production. So the example here is from the Union of Concerned Scientists. So they have a top level label there for food. Pretty plain language, right? Food, I think we know what that is. But when you go under that menu, we have sustainable agriculture, Maybe that doesn't seem plain language for us immediately, but for concerned scientists who maybe work in the climate science space, they might be pretty familiar with that. We might not need to change that label. So this, when I say plain language review, it's really about plain language review for your audience. So moving on from content to performance, this is about understanding, does your site work as expected? Does it help them achieve their goals? Does it also provide help when they need it? So starting with, does your site act like other sites? Can anyone see what might be different about this site we have here compared with other sites? On this site, they have the menu at the bottom of the screen. So there is nothing wrong with being creative in your designs, but it's important to consider at what cost to your users or to your website visitors. So is it worth it to have to pause, look, and then identify that the menu is at the bottom when it's usually at the top of a page? Or maybe possibly miss it altogether because you have lower visibility or poor eyesight? That is a decision. That's the opportunity cost of making these types of changes on your site and not being consistent with other web pages. And then there's feedback. So we've been talking a lot about getting feedback from your audience, but this feedback is about what is the feedback that the website gives a website visitor after they've completed an action. So in this case, after I've completed this form and I click send now, do I get a success message? Does it say your message has been received? We'll get back to you in a week. Or do I get an error message if I happen to have a typo in my email address? That is the type of feedback that's important that you would want to include on the site. Recognition over recall. So this is related to, do you have to remember how certain aspects of the website work? If I was a first-time user coming to the site, do I have to already know the difference between Board Basics A to Z and Board Basics A to Z Part 2? We can make an assumption there's a 1 and a 2, one comes before the other, but what else about it do I need to know and understand so that I don't have to, again, pause and think and make a decision about which one I'm going to click on first? So for our actions, there's an opportunity to review the messages that your site is currently producing when you're giving feedback to an audience member. And then a more advanced technique might be a heuristic evaluation. So on this form, I previously put a typo in my email address and I got 2 error messages. So the bigger one in the red box here just told me that I had an error. It didn't tell me what was wrong, which can be really frustrating, especially imagine if this was a longer form where I also put in my physical address and maybe I put in some other information about myself. I don't know what I need to fix. But they also have this second, more specific error that's telling me I need to enter a valid email address. So I know, okay, I have to go to my email address. What's wrong with it? I didn't include the @ symbol. That's the kind of feedback that's helpful. And again, it's not just error messages. It might be success messages. Just people like to know, did my form go someplace? Was it received? Or is it just kind of going off into the black box that is the internet? A heuristic evaluation is something that is conducted by usability experts. So they can conduct testing on your error messages, but they can also provide testing on really all of the areas that we're talking about today to provide feedback on your site. So they can help you understand these are probably challenges where your audience is getting stuck or getting frustrated, and help you kind of prioritize the fixes. But again, this isn't conducted by your audience. So you would definitely want to pair a heuristic evaluation with some usability testing or with talking to some of your audience members. Now we're going to go into accessibility. Excuse me. So is the content available to users with limited abilities? And I just also want to say there's a lot to cover in accessibility, but we're really just focusing on 2 areas today. So the first is alt text. Most media should have alt text. And I say most because sometimes media is just decorative and wouldn't require alt text. So the Web Accessibility Initiative has guidelines for when and how to use alt text on your media and also offers a decision tree for further guidance. So that'll be linked in the resources as well. Additionally, your site should be accessible by keyboard alone because some of your audience members may be relying on their keyboard. So when you go to your website, can you use the tab and enter to access all parts of the site? So this is what's highlighted here, the skip to main content. That happens when I click tab and it lets someone who's using a screen reader or is using their keyboard to skip past all of the menu content at the top to make sure that they don't have to listen to that again. They don't have to go through that again for each page, before they can go to the main section of the site. So there are a few options for addressing accessibility. But I would say accessibility is always addressed best by when it's another person. So we're going to look at an automated tool, but definitely want to recommend having an expert accessibility review person look at the site and not relying on the automated tool alone. So I like Wave personally. You might also be familiar with Chrome Lighthouse, but Wave is a free website extension that will identify errors for you, including when you might be missing alt text on a site, or maybe you have too long alt text. So it can help you see right away what's going on. As I was kind of saying, it's tempting to think that these tools will find all of your problems to help you solve them, but that shouldn't really be the only means you have for reviewing accessibility. So the Website Accessibility Initiative is the resource that has the alt text decision tree on it. And an expert accessibility, someone who would review your site, would follow these guidelines to ensure that you're meeting with WCAG, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And an accessibility expert would also use tools like JAWS, which is a website screen reader, to review how your website acts on a screen. And that's not something that can be detected in automated testing on Wave. I think we have one more poll question as we get into mobile devices. So when is the last time you looked at your website on a mobile device? Are you doing it all the time? Was it last week, or can you not recall? Okay, awesome. So we got some folks who look at it frequently. We have some folks who say never. So I think that mix is about normal. So we'll go over some opportunities to really improve mobile. Okay, so on mobile, we want to see, is the site usable across different devices and also different sizes? So of course, on mobile, image resize is usually something that comes up. So do the images resize well for smaller screens? And does it stretch? Does it expand? Is it too small? Is it too grainy? That's something we would want to review on mobile. And then also the menu. So usually on mobile, we get those three little lines in the top part of the screen, or sometimes we call it the hamburger menu. In this particular example, you can see it. You might not even be able to see it. It became a very faint icon. So that's not something we'd want on your site. We want to make sure that the menu is accessible, again, in a consistent place. So mobile navigation consistently kind of in that hamburger menu. Is that how your site is behaving, or is it behaving inconsistently to other sites? So for approving mobile, the first one is to review your site on mobile. So make it more of a habit to be looking at that content, and then usability testing. So you can either look at your phone on mobile, or if your website is responsive, you should be able to resize your browser. So just make your browser smaller, and that's going to let you know how is the content and the images showing up on mobile. So you don't have to always go on your personal device or something else to see it. But as we were kind of saying earlier about maybe you produce blogs, maybe you're producing new content, it would be good just to do a double check on mobile is how it's showing up. I would also say the same thing for email, because a lot of folks are checking email on their mobile device. They might not be seeing it on their desktop in a full view. And then usability testing. So this is the same usability slide we saw before, but definitely that would be something you'd want to include when you're talking to your audience about their experience on a desktop site. Also, you want their perspective on using it on mobile to better inform maybe if there's some different challenges they're experiencing there, or maybe some things that they like on mobile that they prefer to use there. So in wrapping up, we covered a lot, but the main takeaways I'd say, I want to make sure that you really get to know who your audience is, or further get to know them if you feel like you know them, and understand what they want, and use that information to then inform your website improvements. And I'll leave you with just some helpful slogans or reminders from the Nielsen Norman Group. My favorite is, "You are not the user." Our improvements are only as good if they're supported by what the users want and need, and that they've told us that we should be improving on the site or our services. So as I said, there is a resource list. This will all be emailed out to you with the slides. And I'm really grateful for your time and attention today, and Aparo for having me present. So thank you so much, and feel free to stay in touch on LinkedIn.
Thank you, Sarah. That was amazing. You put in so much information. Love it. Of course, very fast paced, but you guys will be getting a recording, so feel free to go back at any point just to dive into that a little bit further. Are there any questions? We do have some time for questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
So feel free to either use the chat or the Q&A. We're getting a lot of thank yous. Wonderful detail, exactly. So as you guys are coming up with questions, I do want to mention really quickly again about the Aparo new service around the website evaluation. So Sarah talked a lot about usability testing. So a great place to start, this is a free service, is coming to us and asking some of our volunteers to do some usability testing. So they are going to take a look at your website, and they're going to come from a perspective of 4 different potential audience. So we have the general public. They'll look at it from a volunteer perspective, they'll look at it from a donor perspective, and they'll look at it from a client perspective. So this is just a great way to start off to get some feedback on your website, and then maybe use some of Sarah's other awesome techniques and usability testing methods. So if you are interested in that, I'm going to pull up a poll for those attending right now. For those of you who are watching the recording, I'm going to, let me launch it right now. Sorry. Okay, so for those of you who are attending right now, the question is, would you like to participate in Aparo's free website user experience service to get feedback on your nonprofit website? If you are, please say yes. What I'm going to do is afterwards, I'm going to take the list and then we're going to try and get you started. If you're not ready at this time, that's okay. When you are ready, or if or when you decide down the line you want to participate, you can always reach back out to Aparo and say, hey, I know that website user experience service, if that's still available, can I get on that list? And we can help you out. For those of you who are watching a recording, if you are interested, please email agrant@aparo.org. So it's agrant@aparo.org, and let them know and let her know that you are interested in the webpage. Again, this is kind of a pilot run. We're still working out the kinks. So once we get this up and going, there'll be a more formalized process. Okay. Do we have any questions come through?
I just answered one question in the Q&A about host and domain. I just share, that's not my particular specialty, but I would say it usually depends on if you already have any kind of system up and going. You'd want to make sure it's integrating with those things that you have in place. I know we mentioned I think a CRM at the beginning of the call, but I'm sorry, I don't have a more specific answer for you, but that would be my recommendation.
Another minute. All right, well, if there's no other questions, we'll give you 5 minutes back to your day. Thank you all for attending. And Sarah, again, thank you so much for an amazing presentation. We are so lucky to have you. Everyone else, if you'd like to reach me or Aparo, you know what to do. Other than that,
I see one question that just came in, Yenting.
Okay.
How would you encourage a nonprofit to make a shift in their website without the feeling or criticism? Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think maybe there's the mindset of shifting from this is our very precious website. People probably did put a lot of time and energy into it. It's not about that someone did a bad job or it was poorly designed, but it's about shifting from the nonprofit to the audience. So just like you would do with your nonprofit services, whether you're engaging volunteers or offering some other kind of program, it's about what do they need. So I think that mindset, maybe having that conversation in the stakeholder meeting where you're kind of aligning on those assumptions, can help go from this is about someone doing a poor design to this is about what the audience told us that they need. I hope that's helpful and not too philosophical, but I hope that helps.
Thank you.
I think that's the only other one I saw.
Okay, perfect. Last chance. All right, well, let's go ahead and end it. Again, thank you. Is there another one? Thank you.
No.
Okay. Thank you everyone for your time and have a wonderful rest of the week.
Thanks so much.